Hey everybody, welcome back to CNC Auto Channel, your friendly neighborhood mechanic here. And today we're on a 2006 Ford Escape. And this thing has a really nasty leaking power steering pump. So I'm going to show you today in excruciating detail, unlike all the other videos out there, how to replace the power steering pump on one of these 3.0 V6s. And you'll find this in the 2005 or maybe 2004 through 2012, I think, Ford Escape and maybe some other variants of this car. So come along and let's get into it. So this thing has a leaking power steering pump. How do we know that? Well, the front side of the engine is really nasty. I want to show you. I've removed the radiator out of here. Look down here and I'll point. This is our power steering pump right here. Okay? Look how nasty that thing is. It is just covered in fluid, what looks like oil. And I'm going to show you down from below, how can you tell the difference between just an oil leak and this power steering pump leak? Look how much it has gone and run and coated the air conditioning compressor down there and all of the hoses and everything from this side. I'm going to go ahead and leave this radiator out of the way so that I can show you better how to get this thing in and out of here. And so let's go down and look at the other side from underneath. So if you're questioning whether or not you've got a bad oil leak or a power steering pump leak, come under here and take a look. Look right underneath here. You see all of this nastiness? So that could be oil or power steering fluid or anything. But if you look up underneath this pan right here, a lot of times you'll see drips down sort of on the very bottoms of things, like here on the bottom of the air compressor. You look at that, see how that's sort of a reddish brown, real thin? That doesn't look like oil. And in some other areas, you'll see even more of a reddish tint to that. A lot of times the bottom side of this little plastic tray here will be just coated in oil. So let me show you real quick. Come over here. And we're going to go ahead and remove this. And I've taken all of the bolts out, but there's just 10mm bolts holding this thing in. And then back here, a little Phillips screw that holds that in. So just look how nasty this accumulation of stuff has gotten to be. Whatever's leaking in here and spraying around. It gets caught up on it's getting caught up on our serpentine system and just spraying all over the front of this engine. But like I said, look right down here especially. You can see that reddish brown color to that fluid. That's not oil, that's power steering fluid, but it's been going like this for a long time, really made a mess of things under here. So let's get this fixed. The first thing we need to do in order to get back here and get to that power steering pump is take off this serpentine belt. So come look under here. Before you take off a serpentine belt, just pay attention to how it's routed. Take some pictures or whatever so that when you put it back together, you'll know how it was supposed to go around everything. So we're going to go ahead and remove this serpentine belt. So on this Ford Escape 3.0 liter V6, right up in here where I'm pointing is a 3/8 ratchet drive. You just stick a 3/8 either ratchet or something in it. This is made for removing the serpentine, and you're going to turn it towards the back of the vehicle or to the left. And see, that slacks your belt so that you can go ahead and pull it off of the pulleys, just like that. Now that the serpentine is off of the pulleys and everything, to get to the power steering pump, it sits above this air conditioning compressor. So we're going to remove the air conditioning compressor. We're going to leave the lines hooked up. All we got to do is just unbolt it from the engine and kind of hang it out of the way. There's this compressor on the 3.0 is held on with 3 bolts. There's 2 down here on the bottom and 1 right here I'm pointing to above. Let me see if I can get better lighting on that. Right there. Okay, they're 13mm. So I'm going to go ahead and get those undone. There's one of the lower ones. Yeah, those are some long bolts, huh? And the last lower one. I'm supporting the thing so it doesn't fall on me. There we go. Woo. Okay. Looks like there's a bit of a spacer back there. Let's remove that spacer. So, see this little piece right here? When you get the bolts out of it anyway. Okay. There we go. Now we're starting to be able to get a little bit better vision of where we need to be. Now that the air conditioning compressor is down out of the way, we can really get a good vision of the back of the power steering pump here. And it's going to be held in also with a couple of bolts. There's one here and then one or two up above. Yeah, there's one right there. Right there, kind of rusty looking. Then this one down here, and I'll bet you there's another one on the other side. So it's a good idea to go ahead and compare the new part to the one that you're taking off, and that'll give you a way, come on, let me pull this down. That'll give you a chance to look at where the bolt holes are, and so you'll know where you need to get to remove the bolts. And so we've got a 10mm bolt down here, and then there's this bracket on the back of the power steering pump here that bolts up to these two bolts, and so we can remove these two bolts and leave the bracket, or we can remove the bracket and then remove leave it attached to the pump and remove it later. We'll see which one is easier. Now let's go upstairs so that we can look at these two up on the top side of the pump and see what it takes to remove those. All right, so we're going to have to remove the big main hose here that's coming down. Look where it goes. It comes out of your power steering reservoir here. We're going to remove this hose from the power steering pump. So you'll have to squeeze the retainer and slide it back out of the way. Now, you don't want that power steering fluid to run all over the place, so get yourself some of these pliers and pinch that hose off so that it doesn't just keep pouring power steering fluid all down out of the way. So we'll find a nice easy place to put this and pinch that thing off. Okay, we'll go ahead and get this hose clamp up and out of the way. I'm using this remote hose clamp squeezing pliers. Really handy little tool. Allows you to get down into these tight little areas and onto these kind of clamps that otherwise you might have a little bit of a difficult time moving around. There we go. There she goes. Okay, so now that's free, and let's pinch that hose and we'll get it out of there. Thinking maybe the easiest place to pinch it's going to be like down in here somewhere. Yeah. Now that the hose clamp is out of the way, this hose has secured itself to the metal line here. Been there too long, so get yourself a pick and just go up underneath the hose. If you can, anyway. This one's been on there forever. You want to try and release that grip that it's got on the pipe so that you can slip the hose up and off of the pipe. Just work your way around that hose. There we go. Once you get it underneath it, you can kind of slide it around and it'll release. I've got that hose pinched off, so not too much of the power steering fluid should run out, but some will. Go ahead and pull this up and off of there. There we go. I've got a bucket down there to catch it. Because we got it pinched off here, it's not going to pour out any more than just what was in this little piece of pipe that we had exposed. So let's free up this high pressure power steering line. You got a little clip here holding this pressure sensor. There's a little spring on the bottom of it. Just pull that spring down and that should release the clip. I say that. Oh, push the spring up. So push that spring up and then pull off. There, I'm going to show you again. Just push that spring up and it releases the clip so you can pull it off. And then this power steering hose is attached to the motor mount here with a 15mm nut. So loosen up that nut, pull the hose up and off of it, and make sure you put the nut back so that you don't lose it. We're going to go ahead and remove this pulley from the power steering pump. It's held on with a nut in the center, and that nut is a 19mm, And then you'll also have to turn or hold the pulley in such a way so it doesn't turn while you're trying to undo that nut. So maybe one of the easiest ways is just to find something that you can stick through the pulley that will hold it in place while you try to break that nut free. Here I'm using a screwdriver, and we'll go ahead and try to come across to some way to keep it from turning. There we go. Across to the frame. Oh, there it goes. Broke it free. Now we can spin that 19mm nut off. You can see how I've got this screwdriver just going through the pulley and then just tucked up here, up underneath the frame. That keeps that pulley from turning on you when you're trying to undo this nut. All right, let me get the nut off of the center of this pulley. There's also a washer under that nut. I see right here. It's a nut and a lock washer that go in the center of that pulley. Now, let me remove my screwdriver from where it was wedged in and just wiggle, and it just slides right off. So it was not pressed on, it's just there's some splines, it just slides on. All right, now that the pulley is out of the way, we have better access to the bolts that are holding the pump to the engine. 10mm down here, and then where my finger is right there, another 10mm on top. Then we can remove the two on the back that hold it to the bracket and hopefully get that thing out of the way. So let's see how that goes. Okay, so I got my 10mm ratcheting wrench on the upper bolt, and you can get up in here with that pulley removed and loosen it. And then down here, you can do the same. You can use a socket on this one, but 10mm ratcheting wrench works well also. On the back side of the pump, there's two 12mm bolts that go through this little bracket right here. You can either remove the bracket from the engine with this 10mm that holds it to the engine up here, the rusted looking one, or you can remove these two 12mm bolts, and then the pump itself will be free from the back side. So we'll go ahead and remove this bracket with this 10mm here. Oop, and there she is. And then this whole bracket will come off with the pump. See, that's already loose. Okay, so we got this upper bolt. See where my finger's at up there? We got that upper bolt undone, and now it's time to do this lower bolt, and that is a 10mm. And she is loose. Whew, man. Okay, now that the pump is loose from the engine, and we also look up here, we've taken this power steering pressure hose loose from up top, we can snake the pump up and right through here. Might take a little finagling, but you can rotate it in whatever way you need to, like so. Come up and out. And now you have better access to the top of the pump to undo these lines and any other connections so that you can get this off of here and replace it. So now we need to remove this power steering pressure line. There's a fitting that screws into the top of the pump here. It is a 15/16 SAE, or probably 24 mil, so whatever the equivalent of 15/16 is here. And if you don't have that size, you can probably get away with using a crescent wrench. Just, put it on there. You may find that it's pretty tight on there. And in order to crack that thing loose, a lot of times these sort of fittings that are just sort of tight, once they loosen, they will come away, easily, but they might need just to be shocked. And so you can kind of put it on there and hit it with a hammer, and it'll shock it enough to crack it loose like it did here. And then you can spin this out and remove it. So we've cracked that loose, and this has probably got a little power steering fluid still in it, so we want to make sure that we don't make too big of a mess here. Might want to have a catch pan or something underneath you for this job. But it just unscrews and pulls right up and out of the way, and it's not dripping too bad, But there it is. There's the old one, and we will, it's making a mess, so we want to catch some of that. There's the old one, and we'll go ahead and dump out some of that fluid to make it a little easier on ourselves to work on this one and take some of these parts off. A little valve in there, you want to make sure that you don't lose that. But the new one will come with a new valve, so take that bolt out. Okay, so now we need to take this this hose off. So here's the old pump and the new one. You can opt to buy a new pump that already has its own pulley and feed hoses and all of those other things, or like in this case, you can save yourself probably about sometimes over $100 just by getting the pump by itself and then replacing the old pipes onto the new pump. That's what we've chosen to do. So we're going to have to take off this feed line, and it's held on by two 12 millimeter bolts, and then it has this little bracket that holds it on to the body of the pump with a T40 Torx bit. So we'll go ahead and undo that T40 right there. Set that aside. Now we'll get these 12 millimeter bolts off of the pump here. 1, 2, there we go. Okay, now you want to make sure that you replace all these O-rings. That's probably a big part of the reason why these things were leaking before, is the O-rings have gone bad on them. And the new pump will come with new O-rings. We're also going to have to reuse this bracket on the back side of the pump. It too is held on with 12 millimeter bolts. There's one. And 2. Go ahead and put that on to the new pump. I think that's it for the old one. So the new pump comes with a couple of O-rings. The smaller diameter, the smaller size around but larger diameter one is the one that goes here, and you just want to tuck it into the little groove, and that's where this pipe goes and gets held on. So just make sure it's in its groove, make sure this surface is nice and clean, and then that one is held on with these two 12 millimeter bolts. So the second O-ring that comes in the kit is to replace this one here on the high pressure hose. So get you a little pick, get underneath the old one and remove it like that. Just make sure that you compare it and make sure it's the right one. It is. And all you got to do is just roll it up and put it into the groove that it came out of. Not there, but all the way up. So make sure that it goes all the way up and over to the highest position that it can on here, like up there, like that. There we go. Now this is ready to go in the pump. We'll go ahead and take our pressure hose and set it down in there. Start this by hand. We definitely don't want to cross thread that. Notice I've also put this top bolt in because with this hose in place, it's going to be hard for you to get this top bolt in there. Tighten this thing up and then get your 15/16 wrench. Snug it up. All right, now let's snake this thing back down where it goes. Right down through here. Again, rotate it a little bit just so that it goes down into its home. Go in your home. This other end tries to hang up on things. We'll just get it up and out of the way. There we go. All right, now it's back down where it's supposed to be. All right, so now we've fished it back down in here, and we can go ahead and put it back up where it goes, and we'll just set it in place. And I'm going to start this bottom bolt in there just because it's easy to access. And just get a couple of threads started just so it holds it in place. And then we'll see if we can't start the top bolt, also a 10 millimeter. Can't really reach that one, so we're going to go ahead and let me get that out of your way. I'm going to put this bolt back in right there that's holding that in. All right, so we got the bottom bolt started right down here, and we're going to go ahead and start this one that holds the bracket, because it too is easily accessible from this angle underneath the car. Get a couple of threads started. Now everything should be lined up, and we should be able to bring everything back into its position. All right, the last of the bolts that hold this pump to the engine is this upper 10 millimeter behind the pressure line, and so I've got that started by hand. Now we can go ahead and get some tools in here and tighten those up. Let's go ahead and tighten this down a little bit. There we go. And now we can get up here onto this upper one and thread it in by hand quite a long ways. This one way up here underneath, right there, this guy. You can thread it in by hand. Once you get it threaded in by hand, I found that a 10 millimeter ratcheting wrench will fit on there and let you get that all the way home. Ready to put the pulley back on. So here's the pump in place. Just set the pulley on and you'll feel the splines line up. Just push it down. It'll go down to where it used to be. Don't forget your lock washer and the nut. Get that started by hand. That's a 19 millimeter nut. Now, see that once you try to turn it and tighten it, it's going to turn the whole thing. So you want to get your 19 millimeter wrench and that screwdriver. To tighten it down, you want to put your screwdriver through it and up underneath the frame, right like so. There you go. See, the screwdriver's growing through a hole in that pulley and wedged up underneath there. Get your 19 millimeter ratcheting wrench or wrench of some kind and put it on the nut. Now you can go to tightening it. Let's put it over here. There we go. Little different angle than when we took it off. It's easier. There we go. There we go. Give it a couple of ooga doogas there. Perfect. You don't want to go too crazy with it. You don't want to bend your pulley. There it is. So we've got the power steering pump back up in place here. Got the pulley back on it. Now we're going to go ahead and put this air conditioning compressor back up here. Now the back of the air conditioning compressor has this little, let me see if I can get better lighting on this subject here, has this little bracket, okay? So this bracket goes like this on there. You want to have that in place. And then we can take that. See if we can capture this. All right, stick her back up in here like so. Line up the holes. We've got the upper bolt already in place. The lower ones will line up. Go ahead and start one of these lower bolts as well.
Say 13 mil again.
All these bolts on the AC compressor are 13 millimeter. And get those started by hand. That way we don't cross thread them. There we go. Now we can get the tool and tighten those 3 up. Ready? Okay, so we've got these 2 started down below. Just put it up into place. And we'll go ahead and tighten them up a little bit. Not all the way, just enough where it holds it. That'll make it easier to start the top one. There we go. And we need to start this top one more by hand. There we go. It's just a tight fit. There's no way around that upper one. It's just hard to get to. You may want a ratcheting wrench for that upper 13 mil. Okay, so I am able to get my wrench up in here on that top bolt. Got to come in from above. 13 millimeter. There we go. Tight there. And then we'll come down and get those 2 lower ones here. Just like that. And then we just suck them up. We're going to go ahead and tighten it with the other wrench. Make these tight. If I can find a torque spec on it, I'll put it down below. You don't want to, strip anything out, but you definitely want it to be on there nice and tight. And you also want to look back here real close at where the mating surface is between this pedestal and the block. Make sure that that's flush. Make sure that it's where it's supposed to be. Looks good. All right, air conditioning compressor's back in place. Power steering pump pulley is in place. So just remember to go back and look at the picture you took of the belt routing, but it's pretty self-explanatory on this vehicle. We need a 3/8 drive, goes in to the little square at the top of our tensioner. Then you want to pull the tensioner towards the back of the vehicle, and then take your belt and make sure it's on all of the pulleys. You want to feel around the top of each one of the pulleys and make sure that that belt's in the middle of the pulley so that when you start it, it doesn't come flying off. If everything's lined up, you're good to go from underneath. All right, so come look down here. We've got our new pump attached, and now we're ready to reattach our feed hose. So it's up here out of the way. Remember, we're going to go ahead and snake it back down where it goes. Let me get my arm in here real quick. Okay, so come look from this side, and you can see, just line that thing up, wiggle it back in place. Now we'll put our hose clamp back where it was. All right, so I got my hose clamp squeezer tool on there. Now we've got the hose clamp nice and squeezed, and we can wiggle it, hopefully, down into place where it's supposed to be. Of course, nothing's ever as easy as it should be, huh, guys? Let me get my hands in here. Look at it from a different angle up top, maybe. I can go ahead and pull this hose pincher off, get it out of the way for you. All right. Now maybe you can see a little bit better where we're at. Okay, we're just moving this hose clamp back down, wiggling it back into its place. Almost there. Come on, just a little bit more. Oh, there you go. All right. All right. So you can see how we've got our hose clamp lined up with where it used to be. There's like some markings where it used to be. You want to put it back in the exact same spot. Then you can release your hose clamp squeeze and pliers once it's in place, just like so. There it is. All right, so we got our main feed hose to the power steering pump back on, clamped in place, and now it's time to reconnect our pressure hose. And remember, we took it off of this motor mount. It goes on top of that stud right there, held on with one 15 millimeter nut. So you want to make sure that that's good and tight because there's a ground wire underneath it. If you don't get this good and tight, then that ground wire is not going to have good connection. You might have some weird electrical issues. Okay, the other thing is this connector right here. Remember to take it off, all you got to do is push the wire underneath and it'll spread out the teeth. Put it back on, you just push it on. There you go. So I just want to make sure that everything's tight. I'm going to look at this high pressure line where it screws in. And if you're lucky, you can get your 24 millimeter wrench, or in this case a 15/16 right in there and give it a little bit of a tug. Just make sure that's nice and tight. You don't have any leaks there. Man, that was a big job. I mean, like I said, it's got some fiddly parts to it, but just take your time. You know, if you get frustrated, just take a moment, go get a beer, you know, take a little bit of a breather, come back to it, watch my video. I'm trying to show you all the little tricks, all of the little nuances to it. Unlike most of the other videos out there, man, that was a frustration of mine when I was trying to figure out how to do this, is they skip so many steps. I know it's a long video, but I want to make sure that I showed you everything that it takes to get that power steering pump out of there and put it back in there. So thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you. Please hit the like and subscribe if it helped you in any way. It helps us to reach a greater audience. Y'all have a wonderful day, and God bless.